Please be seated. My friends, we're off book today. I diligently wrote a sermon last week. After a busy week, I finished it up last night. Took about an hour of relaxing. I climbed into bed, and the Holy Spirit said, "You're not going to preach that sermon you just finished." And I went, "Okay." And I got up this morning and I wrote some notes. And so y'all are on a journey with me today. And I don't know how long it's going to take. But I learned something yesterday at the consecration when the preacher got up and he said at the start of it, "Friends, I'm here. You all can take your shoes off." And that was a symbol, a signal that we were both to sit back and enjoy the sermon. Now, Fran, you might need to signal me. I may not stop, but at least I'll know how long I've been going. As we begin this morning, I want to start with a few things, and the first is Epiphany. I made an executive decision a few weeks ago that even though Epiphany is technically on January 6th yesterday, that we were going to shift and we were going to celebrate Epiphany today, which some churches do. And I had in my head reasons at the time why we were going to do that. But now I know this morning why we're actually doing it. We're celebrating the season, we are beginning the season of Epiphany, and today we have the readings from the Feast of Epiphany as opposed to the baptism of the Lord. We kind of mushed it all together, and that's okay. What I want to talk about first here is Epiphany, the word Epiphany, and why we celebrate the season. Epiphany is our word for manifestations of the Lord. This means that while most of the time Jesus walked the earth and we kind of recognize his work as being that of a human preacher and teacher, from time to time there are moments when the divine breaks through and he is revealed as the Son of God. We call that the manifestations of his divinity. And these, my friends, are the Epiphanies. And the first that we celebrate is on the Feast of Epiphany when the Magi come and declare that this baby is holy. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing I wanted to talk about is revelation. Now, revelation is a little bit different word because revelation gets into how in our daily lives God reveals God's self to us. And I wanted to talk about that because when we talk about these epiphanies, they feel really kind of big and almost a little alien. Like, oh my gosh, a dove came down, the light shone, his face glowed, and it makes us start to feel like there's a distance between us and these epiphanies. But I truly believe that God manifests in our daily lives and work, and that is the revelation of God in our lives. And so I want to remind you that God is revealed in our lives on a regular basis. Now, there's one more word that we're going to talk about today, and that is Episcopal. Okay? So all of this being stirred up is because yesterday was the ordination and consecration of the 14th Bishop of Arkansas, the Reverend, now Right Reverend John T.W. Harmon. And I was extraordinarily moved by this service. And this is what has brought me to this sermon today. So Episcopal comes up because what does it literally mean? Bishop, right? It's the Episcopos. It means that we are a church that recognizes that our leadership comes down through a line of apostolic succession, that our bishops, every bishop had the was laid hands upon by another bishop all the way back through the apostolic succession to the original apostles. And in fact, at one point yesterday in the service, the secretary of the House of Bishops announced that Bishop John is the 1,162nd bishop in the succession of Episcopal bishops in the United States. We keep track of this, all right? So we are an Episcopal church. But that word has more to it, because I think the other thing that we often get hung up on, or I don't want to say hung up, sometimes we do, sometimes it's real, it's our foundation, is Episcopal tradition, right? We're a traditional church, and we love our Episcopal tradition. And I think that's another thing that is wrapped up in the word when we say Episcopal. Most of the time, I don't think we're actually thinking episkopos, the Greek word for bishop. I think we're thinking about our tradition, the years and years of the way we've done things. So I want to keep those in mind as we continue to talk. And where I'm going to now actually begin is with the fact that because I've only been here for 6 months, many of y'all do not know or may not realize that I was on the Bishop Search Committee for Arkansas. August of last year, I was selected and I sat on the committee, and we worked very hard for 9 months in order to present a slate of candidates that we were very proud of. And our work actually ended more or less at the election. Now, I've mentioned this for a few reasons. One is because a few times I'm going to slip up and call our new bishop John. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I've spent some time with John over the last year and a half during this process, in interviews, at retreats, in conversations, and at executive council a couple of months ago. And I have come to see John as a colleague and a friend, and not just as our new bishop. And so I have a comfort level now with our new bishop, and so I'm going to slip into calling him John from time to time. The other thing that was kind of an interesting thing that I noticed for the search committee is we do all of this front-end work, and it was a lot of work, right? I mean, we went out and talked to everybody. We tried to get to every congregation. We built this huge profile. We do all these interviews. Anybody who's recently been on a search committee knows how this feels. And then, because bishop search processes are long things, after the election, we knew who the bishop-elect was going to be. But it was another 6 months until that came to fruition. And I found myself, as a member of the search committee, in this pregnant pause period. And that really is the best word for it, because it was like, all right, we have conceived, but now we have the waiting period. We have the preparation period, and there is anticipation, and there's excitement, and there is nervousness, right? There's some anxiety. What's coming next? And I don't think I'm alone in that. But I will say in that, I'll have to share, for you that sometimes down at the church level we don't see, like one of the things is the bishop is my chief pastor. So not only do I have a responsibility to the bishop, but this is also the person that I may need to lean on sometimes. But of course, the bishop is the chief executive of the diocese and shapes the direction and the growth. And we've made a bold change. So I'm not alone there, am I? There was a lot wrapped up in what's coming next. Well, I staged the Kleenex here. Okay. Friends, Yesterday, something glorious was born in the ordination and consecration of Bishop John Harmon. And I'm not saying that to set John up as some kind of Christ-like figure, though I can say with confidence that John does his best to model Christ's ministry in the world, just as we are all called to do it. I say that because yesterday I saw the light shine, and the light shine the glory of the Lord, and it revealed to me the future of our church and ministry together in Arkansas. Now, this part's going to be kind of ad hoc. There's a bulleted list. I'm just going to go where I go. I'll start where the service started. It actually started with the music. About 30 minutes before the service started, selections of music began, and they set the tone for the music that would play throughout the service. What was that music? It was eclectic. It was international, and it was local. There were drums that I understand. We had a group from Liberia, John's home country, come in and play traditional music. There was a piece that John had particularly selected because it was an Arkansas composer that was not well recognized outside, even in the state. There was throughout the service a variety of music, from what we would call traditional music to Negro spirituals to just a complete mix of music. And it all came together in the most beautiful way. And I am here to tell you that though some of it was different from what we might hear on a Sunday, and some of it we all know by heart, it was Episcopal. It was all Episcopal. It was our music. And then we moved into a procession. And this procession, for many reasons, just was glorious. All right, in this procession, we have all the pomp and circumstance that we recognize in the church, right? We love our pomp and circumstance. That's very Episcopal. Friends, this procession had over 300 participants when you count in the banners. 300 participants. There were banners from every church. Thank you, Charlie, for being our banner bearer. There were banners, for the diocese. There are representatives from seminaries, representatives from the presiding bishop's office. There's clergy. It was a giant procession, and it had all the pomp and circumstance you could imagine. And you know what my favorite part of this procession was? The youngest members. You see, I have a couple of colleagues that are adopting children, and among their children are two preemie twins. And because the preemie twins are a little behind in development, they can't go in childcare. And these are both priests, both parents are priests, and they are both in the procession. One was on the search committee and one was on the transition committee. So what did they do but carried those babies in the procession? I was the official bottle carrier, so. And we processed, and those children were also part of that procession. And that said something, that meant something to me. It meant something to me because as we lined up in procession, everybody helped carry the children. and we would, swap out so Mom and Dad's arms wouldn't get tired. As we came down the halls, people reached out, touched those children. As we passed the line of bishops, the bishops all were like, "Ooh, babies!" The last one before we went in was John, who was like, "Oh, the babies are here." And there in the procession were the youngest future Episcopalians right there. Another aspect were the visitors. Like the Magi, we had visitors from all over the world coming together to celebrate with us. And when I say all over the world, know that the recently seated Bishop of Liberia was present. We had, when I got to Little Rock, I was like, I've done diocesan events before. We've had convention, we've been in the hotel, and you take a block of rooms, this, that, and the other, right? We occupied 90% of the DoubleTree, Marriott, and Capitol hotels. I believe, from my rough count, that we had more people there from out of town than we did from in-state. And that, friends, speaks to the cloud of witnesses that has loved and supported John to this point in his ministry. So I mentioned the bishops were all lined up. There's 27 bishops when we started and 28 when we left. They came from all over the place. They were representative of men and women, of people of color from all over the country. And then one final little thing that I throw out is, so John made a point of really wanting a broad representation within this entire ceremony, to be as open and inclusive as he could. And so one of the last things he did was, not last, but one of the things he did that I think captured everybody's heart was, y'all remember we had our induction here a few months ago, and there's the presentation of the gifts, right? Well, that same thing happens at a consecration. In this case, it was like a parade of gifts, literally across the front of the stage. There are vestments, and there are accoutrements, and there are all the things in travel bags. A bishop comes with a whole, it's like Barbie's travel set. So anyway, and the last things that were brought to John were the vestments that he's actually going to wear that day now. So, the vestments of his office include he put on the cope and his pectoral cross, and his chasuble was there because he was going to be presiding. But the presented gift that was special, and we know the crozier is one of the signs of office, of the pastoral nature of the office. And Bishop Benfield actually handed that off because that was kind of the handing off. But the last gift to come up on the stage was the mitre, the fancy hat they wear. And the presenters for the mitre were the children of the diocese. So up on stage come these 2, 3, and 4-year-old girls carrying the mitre. And they come up to the stage, and John turns and sees them, and he immediately knelt down to receive them. And he stayed right down there with them until they were comfortable receiving and handing that off to him and putting it on his head and eventually giving him a hug before they left. And those children, not everybody knew this, but just in case you're curious, happened to be the great-grandchildren of retired Bishop Christoph Keller II. I could go on and on of these moments. The whole service was 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours long, and I could probably talk for that long, but I won't. Fran's probably over here going, "Oop, yep." What I need you to know is that in yesterday's service, I saw God revealed. I didn't just see it. I felt it. I heard it. I smelled it. I tasted it. Through that service, we laughed, we cried, we clapped, and we clapped with the music. We cheered, and we prayed. Friends, when God is so present in a moment, so manifest in the world around us, that the hidden becomes clear to our senses that way, that is what we call an epiphany. When the hidden becomes manifest in the world, we are seeing God. And that is what I experienced yesterday. And the first words out of my mouth when the service was done is, "This is the church I want to be a part of in the future." I saw the future of our church yesterday. I saw God revealed in the love and the joy and the celebration of new ministry. And I knew this is the church I want to belong to. This is what I want to help build. This is what we are called to work for. And I stand here today to invite you to join me, because I hope that we'll work together on that future.